Welcome to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast, where we are always on the level. We're your hosts. I'm Brother Samuel.
I'm Brother Gabriel.
And I'm Brother Ryan.
And we're just a bunch of Masons trying to find our place in this fraternity.
So today, Craftsman, we have an interesting episode for you. We have an episode that's going to give you insight into the inner machinations of one of my favorite hosts of my favorite podcast. I think, Craftsman, we've all gotten to know Brother WIlburn fairly well over this journey together in the podcast, and we've gotten to know a little bit about him, a little bit of what he's done, a little bit of where he's been, but it's not the complete picture. And I think today, after listening to this interview, you'll have an idea that maybe, just maybe, that Brother WIlburn is way more than the cover of his book presents. And that experiences and things you've been through before don't define you as a Mason, as a man, as a person. It's about how you interpret them, how you act, and how you conduct yourself.
But, Craftsman, before we subject you to that, we just have some fun, busy work that we need to get out of the way. The first thing is, some of you may have noticed that the logo on the podcast has changed. It is officially Season 2, and we are officially 1 year in, and we'd like to thank you for coming with us on that journey. But on top of that, we also would like to say thank you to our wonderful quality engineer. We have chosen to give him and promote him to co-host. With all the hard work, dedication, and shenanigans that he has put into this show, we have felt that he's earned a place up there with us as a partner.
And I would like to just say I am in the center, as I should be.
Well, he's also
How humble.
he's also the secretary of the lodge, so it's the only recognition he's ever going to get.
Wow. Sad.
Also, Craftsman, this episode being our first episode of the second season, we have chosen to join the Podcastathon of this year. Podcastathon brings awareness to charities all throughout the country, and we have chosen to dedicate this year's Podcastathon to the Shriners Hospital for Children, probably the best charity in my heart, one of my favorites. Shriners goes out of their way to bring care to children, burn victims, those with spinal bifida, and they do it at very little to no cost to the families. A large part of their volunteer base is made up of Masons, of Shriners. It's just an amazing charity that I have been very proud of since I was a little kid. And working in healthcare, I know very, very many cases with Shriners children. And I know a lot of people that I have worked on in the x-ray field. I've taken x-rays and they talk about they were at Shriners Children's when they see my ring. And they said they changed their lives. So this year's episode is dedicated to them, Craftsmen. And we hope that you will go to www.shrinerschildrens.org and make a donation. The podcast itself will be making a donation this year, and we hope that you will join us in doing so.
And then on other news, for the brothers and listeners that have you already know, we do respond to your messages through Facebook or email or stuff. There is 3 of us, and we all live very different schedules. We have someone that works third shift, first shift, and just all around whatever shift he can work, and usually is 20 hours a day. So we do appreciate all the messages you guys have been sending us, all the questions. Hey, what about this? What about this? Or how do I join and stuff? It may take a little bit of time for us to respond because we like that all 3 of us can see it before we send something back representing the podcast. We don't want Brother WIlburn to say something that maybe Brother Gabe or Brother me, I don't know why I just referred to me as third person, but wouldn't agree with. So we kind of all have a other chat that we can talk. Hey,
We have a brainstorm.
yeah, how do we want to handle this and stuff? I mean, we've gotten brothers from California, Texas, across the pond, everywhere talking to us and stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're ever like, oh, I really want to talk to them, but I don't want to bother them, send us the message. Send it. We may not respond right away, but we will get back with you.
And I'd like to say thank you to all of you who have reached out to tell us your thoughts on the podcast. It's the only way we're going to get any better.
Yep.
It's the only way that the topics get any better is only by telling us the truth and telling us what you think. There's been a couple of you that have reached out and gave us some really, really big feedback, and I really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who took the time to take our surveys so far. We're going to keep that going for another month. But we have some very, very big things coming in store for the podcast and for all of you craftsmen. And I mean some big things. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And last but not least, we would like to say how thankful we are to our home lodge, Genoa Lodge number 433, for officially sponsoring us going forward. And we are hopeful that this is a way to bring the light of masonry to our community, to our friends, and as well as just to encourage brotherhood here in our own home lodge. So again, we want to say thank you to Genoa Lodge 433 for being official sponsors of the Third Degree Masonic Podcast.
Thank you for the trust, brothers.
And now, listeners and craftsmen, we hope you'll join us for what's going to be an awesome interview. All right, Sam, you're in the hot seat. How does it feel?
It's a lot weirder when I'm not going to be the one asking the questions.
I know, this is going to be a first for you, isn't it?
Yeah, other than telling a couple of stories, personal anecdotes.
You don't have control of the podcast that you started.
You know what?
There's been
That's okay.
There's been a mutiny. You're no longer in charge.
You're the captains now.
Oh boy. So, my brother from another Masonic mother.
That just sounds weird, but continue.
How long have you been a Mason?
So I joined when I turned 19 on the dot. I mean, I think I turned my papers in the day of my birthday.
And that was in 1971 or?
No, earlier than that.
1871?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm 31. So almost 11 years ago. 10 years ago on the dot.
Just because me and you are so close to the same age, can you just say that one more time and let it sink into your brain?
I am 31 years old.
How does that make you feel?
Old. I feel old.
And you've been a Mason since you've been 19.
Yes.
So
my knees hurt.
From the weight of masonry or from the weight of life?
Yes.
Jeez.
I'm tired, boss.
What? Never mind.
So,
but I originally started my Masonic career at Northern Light Lodge number 40 in Maumee, Ohio. I followed my DMLA dad advisor, Chris Gorsuch. Was an active member there for a long time. I was even an officer for a hot minute. It's actually where I met Brother Ryan. He joined during one of my hiatuses. I don't think I was there for any of your degrees.
No, you weren't there for any of my degrees. I think my very first stated meeting as a Master Mason, you decided to show
Came
up.
back because Max called me and asked me to come back.
Yep.
Just some personal problems, personal squabbles between brothers. I had to take a break. I couldn't, I got mad. I got angry. I had a big problem with my temper when I was younger. If I was doing something that I thought was right and somebody stopped me or got in my way, I took it personally. I didn't see it. It was hard for me to see from other people's point of views. I can't say if that situation is that. I just know going forward, I probably could have handled it better. There were a couple of times that I left for a year or so, didn't come back. Typically somebody would have to drag me back. So Max asked me to come back. I did.
Yeah.
And then not long after that, I had another situation very similar. And I left for probably my longest hiatus. Never stopped being a Mason, paid dues, did whatever, but just didn't go to meetings. Yeah. And
needed a break.
Needed a break. And as I've said it before, Dustin Cashin, Brother Cashin, worshipful Brother Cashin, was getting ready to take his seat in the East, and I told him that I would be his LEO, and I did.
I remember it was great.
And I promised him a year. I had zero intentions of sticking around and sticking in the chairs. I was helping out a brother that asked for help. But then we just ended up having so much fun. I agreed to be junior deacon, a chair I've done before, and now I'm senior deacon, and I think you're stuck with me.
Eventually, Grand Master.
Oh my God.
Listen,
I can see your future.
Oh, geez.
The last time Brother Gabe was like, hey, you know what you should do? You should start a podcast. Look at what we're at right now. Now he's saying, hey, you know what you should do? Run for Grand Master.
Oh, geez.
So I'm saying, what, it's
42 is what I said.
2042? Okay, 2042. Counting down the days.
Oh, geez.
42, the meaning of life.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The meaning of Masonic life, 2042.
I think if I was going to be Grandmaster, I think people would have to get really chill about a lot of things very quickly.
So, I know we've talked about it a lot before, but for the listeners who may not know, where did you first learn about Freemasonry? And I know we're going to talk about DeMolay with this, but did you know anything about Masonry even before then?
I did not, actually. I didn't know a single thing about Masonry. I grew up, I was an only child. My father was not a Mason. My father was a laborer, skilled tradesman, welder, got his technical credentials from Penna Career Center, which is like a technical school here in Northwest Ohio, and he worked at Jeep. He was a sheet metal specialist, tier 1, like master welder. I mean, they give you 30 minutes to do your test for welding. Dad could do it in 8, and they were beautiful, beautiful welds. I mean, he was so proud of his welding. But my dad was not he would say he's not a social guy. He's not a guy for groups. He wasn't the guy that, played well with others, but strangely enough, he had some of the best friends in the world and everybody loved him and knew him. So I think he would have made a really good Mason had he been a Mason, but I don't think he ever had any interest in joining. I found Masonry through martial arts. My martial arts instructor, Master James P. Taylor, most worshipful brother, and master of the craft for the Royal Schofield Society, because I'm so proud of him. He was I think he was the master of the lodge that year, and they were trying to start DeMolay back up here in Genoa. It had been dead for decades. And we went about, they had a, friends night, had people up, and Master Taylor goes, well, I got a bunch of young men, I'll send them right upstairs, because the Masonic Lodge was right above his studio. He just said, make sure you bring me back a piece of pizza. So here I am, sitting here with a bunch of guys my age, most of them I know, and they're promising us fun and food and females, and it's the 3 F's of DeMolay. Fun, food, and fraternity. But, we always added the females to it. And I don't think I knew what it was. I thought I was joining some, like, after-school program, kind of like the Cub Scouts or the Boy Scouts.
You just saw it as an after-school fun activity with your friends.
Right, exactly. I didn't think, I thought it might be something I might do for a year or something like that, and then it would fizzle out, or we just wouldn't do it anymore. And I just knew Master Taylor wanted me to do it, and it sounded fun. Little did I know I would quickly make this whole organization my personality. And I went from I was probably the most mature out of our group. We were all probably 12, 13, maybe 14 being the oldest. I mean, we were young, and then our master counselor was 16. So we were a young chapter.
The blind leading the blind.
More or less, but we had a really good dad advisor, and we had really good leadership coming from the district, and things really looked up. I was seen as the most mature, so Tim asked me to be his senior counselor, which is like the senior warden or the vice president of the chapter. So I was technically the second master counselor from the rebirth.
Mm.
I had no idea what I was doing. And I would argue that my term was a failure had I not had really good leadership holding us up. I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
And we just kept it going. I mean, nobody doubled up. We never had a double up until I was out.
So obviously you joined because Master Taylor asked you.
I did.
So did you talk to your parents that night after you got home and was like, oh, Master Taylor wants me to join this weird club or anything?
I did. My mother had some feelings about it.
Oh.
My mother is a wonderful woman and loves me very much. I'm an only child. And she was a little bit of a helicopter parent. And she found out it was sponsored by the Masons. And my mother worked in the financial field. She was a secretary for investment bankers. And one of the guys that she worked with was a Mason. He's a Scottish Rite Mason, Blue Lodge Mason. I've known him my whole life. Great guy. I'm not going to name him on the podcast because not proper, but great guy. My mom is like the FBI looking for a serial killer. She found out information about Ted Korn and Chris Gorsuch that I don't think they know that she knows. But mostly she went to this guy and was like, hey, is this on the up and up? And he was like, yes, it's on the up and up. Your son's safe with these guys. They're good people. And from that moment on, she would just let me just climb in the car with grown adults. She never knew where I was. Where are you going? I don't know. Some Masonic Lodge somewhere. Where the hell's that? I don't know.
I'm going to go there anyway.
What are you doing? I don't know. I need $20.
So DMLA was good years.
Yes.
Not saying being full-fledged Mason isn't good years, but is there something with DMLA that you remember most? A night, an event, or because you guys used to, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys used to have sleepovers here in Genoa Lodge with Mark Allred. He was the supervisor.
Close. So Mark became the dad advisor of the chapter later. Our first advisor was Ted Korn, who was an active member of the International Supreme Council and our first district governor, and Christopher Gorsuch, who was just fresh out of the Marine Corps and was looking for something with his life. And he came, Ted and him caught up on Facebook, and Chris had no idea he was going to be our dad advisor. He was just out of the Marine Corps. He had no idea what he wanted to do with his life. He was doing odd jobs, and he reconnected with Ted, and he was like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's still alive. At this time,
Ted, but
we love Ted, but
he still won.
That his words, not mine. But so he goes on and starts talking about, I'm not really doing anything. And Ted goes, well, hey, why don't you come to this meeting with me? Why don't you come to this meeting with me? DMLA is still going. We're really, really working on it. Why don't you come help out? Because he was a senior DMLA. And the next thing you know, he's the dad advisor of Ottawa chapter.
That's how it generally goes.
I had never met him before this. So the first event that I ever met Chris at, we were doing the reconsecrating Browning home. It was when Charlie was Grand Master.
Yep.
And I was just told, hey, this guy's coming to pick you up to bring you here. And I'm like, I don't know this guy. And it's just me and him riding in a car to the Browning home. Literally have never met this man before. I'm sitting in the front seat of his bright red, cherry red Kia that doesn't even have a radio. So we're just riding in silence. It was bare bones, stick shift.
Like hell.
Did not have power steering.
Oh, it's a good way to get acquainted with someone.
But we're riding, and he goes, we're just quiet. And he goes, you like video games? And I went, yeah, I like video games. And he's telling me about this video game that he used to play in the Marine Corps that was like a training exercise, but it was a video game. And we just talked about that for 45 minutes. And weirdly enough, I can't even tell you anything about that conversation, but after that, I was like, yeah, this guy's pretty cool. Little did I know that this man would pull my ass out of the fire multiple times in my life, would be one of the only lifelines I had when I really genuinely needed somebody and was like, hey, man, I need help. If I had any clue what this man would end up being to me, more than just the advisor to my youth group, it blows my mind. But it's all relative, and it's all, it's important to me because I grew up as an only child. And I say that because I was very lonely growing up. I didn't have the neighborhood I lived in was all old people. Didn't really have cousins that I got to hang out with very often. Didn't have neighbors, So my first interaction with people or kids my own age was when I was dumped into kindergarten and I didn't understand social cues, and I paid for it. I was bullied mercilessly. It really wasn't until I hit 4th or 5th grade that I finally figured out that I was bigger than them, and when you hit somebody in the mouth, they stop talking. It sounds bad, but
you can still do that now. But
now you go to jail.
The management of this podcast would like to express that our official line of policy is to not engage or support or condone child-on-child violence.
When did I approve that?
Maybe this was a bad idea, having Sam in the hot seat. I thought it was bad when I was in the hot seat.
We're going down a trip down memory lane here.
We really, truly are. But I didn't have anybody. I was alone all the time. I had a very active imagination because you have to when you're alone all the time. I think you understand what I'm talking about.
I do.
You have to make your own fun. Yep. And sometimes you got to make your own friends.
Yep.
So it wasn't until I finally, I had a couple of really good close friends growing up. Brother Caleb Valley, who was a member of DMLA, Travis, Esteban. There was a few of these guys. And I met Ricky when I was a little bit older. But we joined, I joined DMLA with Brother Cashin and Vince. We joined together. We took our obligations for DMLA at the same time. And then we started bringing in people. I brought in Caleb and Travis and Esteban. I brought in all of my friends who were my really good friends, the only friends that I had in school, and brought them into the fold, and brought Ricky into the fold.
You brought Ricky into DMLA?
I did. I said, hey, man, you should come do this thing with me. We meet twice a month and we have pizza. And sometimes there's females there. And Ricky was all about females back then. Yeah, it's
He's still all about that now, but...
Yeah.
Well, now he has a girl.
But so we all, I thought it was just going to be like this after-school activity. But what DMLA taught me, it gave me confidence in myself. And I learned skills. I learned how to be a leader. I learned how to talk. I learned social cues. I learned the social cues that I never got growing up. I got to learn them because, oh boy, did I get my ass ripped for saying some dumb stuff. And Ted and Kristen put up with it. They were making the next generation of leaders and young men in DMLA. And we met that challenge head on. We were always the best ritualists. We were always the best dressed. We were always a borderline cocky about it. But we were so proud of what we were doing. But mostly DMLA gave me this sense of belonging. That I had brothers that were not just friends. They weren't going to get mad at me because I beat them in a Halo game and stopped talking to me. Or because I didn't like playing Call of Duty, or I didn't like the color blue this week. They weren't going to stop being my friends because of it.
Yeah. So you and I have very similar experiences of DMLA, and we value it in very similar ways. So DMLA wasn't the complete teacher, though. It gave us the foundation. It gave you a foundation. And where did you take that foundation into Masonry? Did it help you with certain things? What else did you need to build on once you got into Freemasonry? Because not all of our brothers in lodge are DMLAs.
Right.
Some guys we go to lodge with have built their lodge careers just being men that came off the street. They didn't have the leg up in learning how to administer, learning how to be in a brotherhood like we did as DeMolays. And Ryan, you missed out on some good times.
Yeah.
But I know you're fully accepted in this friend group now, but
to also answer your question, I do have a true and proper answer to your question.
Oh,
yes.
I just didn't know if we were skidding around that or...
I'm sorry. We went on a tangent there. We're good at it. But
memory lane's great.
But to answer your question, there was a night, I think I had been a member for a couple of years at that point, but we didn't do a whole lot of branching out of Northwest Ohio for a while because they didn't want us playing in the ocean too deep. And I was the only person from our district to go to Odell that year. And my parents dropped me off at camp. It's pretty much Camp Masonry. I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's at a camp that's owned, it's like outside of Columbus or Cleveland, I can't remember. And it's Ohio DeMolay Leaders of Excellence. It's a weekend-long camp session where they teach you how to be a leader. But I was the only one from my district to go. And that was terrifying because it meant I had to hang out with all of these people that I didn't know. And they drop you in a cabin, and I'm the only guy in this cabin that's from, our district.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of afraid. But then I got to know these guys, and by the end of Odell, we were best friends. I mean, we acted like we knew each other for decades. And I mean, it had only been 2 days. But it always ended with this ceremony. We called it the Circle of Brotherhood. More or less, it's that, everybody sits down around a candle and talks about their feelings or their, what DeMolay means to them or how they're feeling at that time or some bad things that happened to them. And, it's kind of getting things off your chest. Or in some practical aspects, it is a bitching session. Sometimes when you're just having that disagreement, it's an airing of the grievances, and you get everybody in a circle and you start talking about what's bothering you. And when it's done, when that candle gets blown out, you don't bring it up again. I just remember we were sitting there and we were talking about how we would be brothers forever. And I just remember I think that was one of the moments where I was like, wow, this is more than just like some after school activity. So to answer your question, Ryan, and to answer your question, Gabe, I think DeMolay was a good foundation. But when I joined Masonry, I think I thought I knew everything. When we're young, we know everything. We're bulletproof and, insufferable almost. Just enough to not die, but not enough to make an educated decision. And I think I went in thinking I knew everything about the fraternity because I was a DeMolay, because I had been there and I had done that. I think it took me a long time to sit back and realize how little I know. How little about life, how quickly it can change on you, and what it truly would mean to me at the end of the day.
Do you think that Lodge helped you learn that temperament and that different way of thinking, or did DeMolay help you kind of retrospect, or is it a combination of the two?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think DeMolay taught me how to be an upstanding good man. It gave me the tools to give me the head start in life. Masonry gives me the tools to be a good man now. What do I need as an actual man to find knowledge, to find enlightenment, to find peace? I think for me, what I have to always work on is that introspection. I always have to look inwards and make sure that what I'm doing is not an emotional response to something made in anger, disgust. Because it's easy to do.
Yeah.
It's so...
You're taking a few seconds, realizing what's going on. collecting your thoughts, taking your breath.
And you have to, because I don't care what anybody tells you. Are we all brothers? Absolutely. I love all of my brothers. We're all members of this big fraternity, but you can't have an organization this size and not bump heads.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Chris always told me, you got to have thick skin in this organization because people are going to step on you unintentionally. They're not doing it, intentionally, but they're going to accidentally step on you, and you have to decide how you're going to handle that.
Yep.
People are going to constantly tell you what you're doing wrong, and you have to decide how you're going to respond to that. Are you going to take it as constructive criticism? Is it constructive criticism? Are you going to change? Are you going to tell them where they can shove it? I mean, these are all things that you have to decide.
Polite way.
No,
Punch them in the mouth to shut them up. Like,
well, unfortunately, we can't do that.
I mean, you can.
I would argue that brothers fight, but I don't think
we should have Masonic
Fight Club.
Royal Royale, like Rumble Night.
Masonic Fight Club.
First rule of Masonic Fight Club: there has to be green beans at Masonic Fight Club.
Oh, Jesus.
But I've always argued that we need to have an airing of the grievances, and everybody has to bring a canned good, and then you can complain about one thing for every canned good that you bring, and then we donate that to the food pantry, and we would just...
That would be an incredible way to do Grand Lodge.
The only thing I see about that problem with that is we need a time limit. Oh, you brought the smallest can of green beans, you get 2 minutes. Go.
2 minutes, go.
Or if someone brings a truckload of green bean cans.
Cool. You get 10 minutes. Talk about whatever fuck you want.
But
no, see, this is why I think you should be Grandmaster, Sam, because you have ideas like that.
2042.
I know. See, and that's something I do like about you is, no offense, you have painted this really rough, gruff, rough and tumble biker look for you. You have cultivated this I don't take no shit personality from you. You have developed quite the thick armadillo skin coming from the outside. But you really are
a big soft teddy bear.
A big soft teddy bear and a kind-hearted guy. And you are always talking about charity events to do. You are always talking about donating to food shelters. You are always talking about raising money for the Shriners or doing the fundraisers that you guys do at your clubs. And that is something that I always knew about you, but I think has gotten amplified over the years, especially through Masonry. I think you really take the Masonic teaching of charity to heart.
It's probably one of my favorite ones. I think it's charity and brotherhood are the two things that I think hold us together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the titles fade. We have moments where, the lodge can be doing really good or really bad. It's up and down. It's a roller coaster, but charity lasts forever. The brotherhood will last forever. And you're right. I have to have thick skin. It's a learned response to things. It's a trauma response. I just learned pretty early on that most people are not nice. I like to think people are good, but I think a lot of people's first instinct is they go with what's their first. They're mean.
Yep.
If they're not happy on the inside, they're going to take swipes at you because they see you happy. I have just learned to not care about that. I don't let other people's negativity bring me down. And sometimes you have to be tough. Sometimes you have to be gruff. And you and I have talked about this, as much as sometimes you want to sit there and have somebody talk to you and, you want to be the peacekeeper. Sometimes you got to put your feet in the sand and just say, you will go no further. This is my boundary and you're not going to pass it. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's something I've had to set for myself because I used to let people talk to me that way. I used to let people talk about me however they wanted. I don't anymore. And if you're going to, it's not a violent response. I'll just cut you out of my life. I don't need it. It makes my life easier and it stops me from having to make me feel like I have to be negative, so I don't have to have that temperament, so I don't have to explode and be angry. And I'll tell you what, though, masonry is one of those things where when I find out you're a mason, that boundary gets a lot wider.
Mm-hmm.
I let masons get away with things that I wouldn't let anybody else get away with.
Within reason.
Within reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people say stuff to me, it happens. You argue with your brothers. It's going to happen.
You tend to argue a little bit more sometimes.
I tend to put my feet in the sand and I hold my ground, but I also refuse to sugarcoat things. I am a very tell it like it is honest, because
Brutally honest.
See, some people say the same about me, but I also tend to really word salad things sometimes and really try to deflate a situation by either changing how I'm speaking or change what I'm talking about or the way I'm talking about it to kind of diffuse that situation. You will just grab the bull by the horns.
Sometimes.
There are times where you could stand to have a little bit slightly different dialogue with how you're talking about stuff. But at the same time, I think that your experiences and the journey of introspection, self-reflection, and temperance that you have been going on with Lodge and yourself lately is helping to build that.
I would agree with that. I think I'm getting a little bit better at not necessarily being so stubborn. I usually, let's face it, you and I just had one recently. I was so angry about something, and I went on for 45 minutes about how it was wrong. But at the end of the day, I went to that person I had a problem with, and we talked it out, and we were all done. It was all over with. And there was nothing said about it. And actually, I'm completely in support of what they're doing. So it's almost like I got to get it out. And then once it's out, I can start thinking rationally.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like with my brothers, I can trust you guys that you're going to keep it between us.
Yeah. And to circle back real quick to the thing you said right before the point you made there of what you've done through Lodge, building your temperance and everything and changing over time, I would argue that that might be one of the core purposes of Freemasonry, is to take good men and make them better. And the thing is that process can take an infinite amount of time. We always talk about how we never are going to achieve perfection, but we're going to strive for it. I am never going to be as level-headed and not emotional as I want to be, but I'm going to strive for that because I have this way of thinking about the world that I truly believe is morally correct and is a good foundation for every proper man to have. And I'm going to do my best on the daily, like you do, Sam, to strive for my goal. I'm not going to hit it. I'm never going to get there. But it's the point I can get close and I can keep trying to get to that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I have constantly, in my own head, thought, I don't think I'm a good Mason. I don't think I'm, like, if you look up what a Mason is, if you look up the Masons that we see on the internet and the ideal Mason, I don't think I'm him. I'm a good brother. I am a good
110%.
brother. I have your back every day, no matter what, Monday through Sunday. Any time of the hour you call me, I am coming. And whether that's coming with ice cream because you're having a bad day and you need to cry like a little girl, or you need me to show up with a pew-pew and where you got to hold off, bad people, anti-Masonic shenanigans.
And this is the biker side of you that comes out a little bit.
But no, it's the side of me that I defend my own. I'm a good brother.
Protector and a lover.
Ryan knows this for a fact.
There's
I
multiple parties where
I stopped Ryan from getting his face smushed in by a guy about 3 feet taller than him because he ran his mouth too much. And the guy didn't
Why
understand.
Does that not shock me?
I made a joke about one of our friends, and the person didn't realize that she was a friend and thought I was being very inappropriate. So I was not
Also,
fully
alcohol
aware.
was involved, but I also told the guy I wasn't going to let him put his hands on Ryan. But I'll also tell you, as soon as that situation handled itself, I walked Ryan out and I told him, you need to watch what you say around people who don't know us.
Yeah, you did.
I would
What I said was nothing super inappropriate.
Nope.
It was just kind of like how we pick on you all the time.
backhanded comment.
Mhm.
He took offense to it.
Yeah.
Thought he was standing up for a lady's honor.
Well, that's what happens when alcohol is involved and people don't understand the
Correct.
context of what's going on.
And I'm stone cold sober because I came from work.
So then, Sam, I kind of got 2 questions for you, and you've kind of answered them, but I want to get more definitive.
Okay.
So obviously, you've talked about how you've changed as from boy to manhood, and how you've grown to be a better Mason. Now I want to see if there's one thing in the fraternity you could change, what would it be? And then the second part of it is, what does being a part of this fraternity mean to you? What does it mean to you for you to say, I am a Mason?
So what I would change in this fraternity, I think, and it's completely my own personal opinion and not that of the podcast or anybody I work with. It's my opinion that we are too worried about ceremony and pomp. We are too worried about inspections, and we're too worried about putting on these activities and debatably even traveling to put on a good show. We're not fixing any problems, and we're not fixing any of life's problems in doing this.
So to kind of put it bluntly, you're saying we're looking too much outwards and not so much inwards?
I think in certain circumstances, I think lodges need to be focused on themselves. I think the time for big dog and pony shows is over. I think for the fraternity to continue thriving going forward, each lodge in its own entirety needs to find its true identity, find its vibe, needs to find its place in the community, and it needs to take care of its own members.
Oh.
And if it does that, maybe we can get back to the heyday of when we had, 5,000 members of a lodge, and you had to have a reason to send them off and do other things because you had to give these guys something to do.
Yep.
But we're not in those numbers anymore, and lodges are hurting.
Yeah.
And I think people need to stop being so worried about jumping to another appellate body or jumping into being an officer or a district officer or a Grand Line officer. These are all things that come with time, come with experience.
They're great, but shouldn't be number one priority.
Should not be goals. I think in general, we should all be looking towards being better members of our lodge, of our local lodge, and the lodges should take care of themselves, and the districts and the Grand Lines should be there to say, what do you need from us?
Would you also say prioritizing their newer members too?
Yes, educating new Masons. I think we also spend too much time in trying to make new Masons, not what we're going to do with them after we make them. And it's a problem that we are currently working on right now. I mean, hopefully we have some cool things to talk about on this show going forward. Nothing that we're going to reveal yet because nothing's set in stone. But going forward, what do we do with these new guys when they join? We got to give them something to do. What are they looking for? How do we give it to them? Because that's what the lodges should be for. We're not just here to meet up here once or twice a month, read the minutes, pay the bills, and leave. Yeah. There's more to it than that.
And not to, again, as you said, this is now opinion of the podcast as a whole, or
just me.
Genoa Lodge, or
we have our little disclaimer we put in.
Just me today.
British voice.
I tend to agree with you, and I believe a lot of, I'll say, younger Masons are starting to agree with you. We haven't fully 180 turned back towards But as my boss says, we're the guys leading or driving the Titanic, trying to miss the iceberg.
You just spin, spin.
We're turning it, but you can't turn that large of a ship 180 in a day.
Nope.
It takes a degree. So, and the very first step on solving a problem is admitting you have one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of Masons are starting to do that.
Well, yes, but it's also very hard for an organization this size to admit that they have a problem in the first place.
Yes. But I think we're getting there.
To be fair, though, there's not... Problem has too much of a negative connotation to it, because this fraternity means so many different things to so many different people. And the problem is, because we've talked about this at length before, of the double-edged sword of Masonry and what a lot of lodges are experiencing right now is that you need people to put on the good community work and the good degree work, but you need to get those people in. But the reason why you can't get the people in is because you don't have the people to put on
the big
or put in
events.
the effort to put in the big community events and the big education events and the completely mind-blowing degree work for new candidates. Now, granted, it's amazing what some devoted skeleton crews in lodges can do. It was amazing what some devoted DeMolay chapter skeleton crews could do. And what the type of devoted degree work we can pull off. And I'm not saying degree work is not necessarily the issue. People not knowing their parts in some areas is not the issue. The issue is that, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to hijack this, Sam.
You're good.
It's just that we'll take a new guy like me. I am finally sitting on the sidelines with finally the opportunity to really, really immerse myself in my ritual, teach candidates ritual. I'm literally teaching candidates rituals and how to be Masons and trying to get them to go to places and experience the degrees they've seen. And also I can just sit on the sidelines and just relax and enjoy this fraternity. I came in... the day I became a Master Mason, I became a steward.
Right.
Like, I didn't have the opportunity to sit out in the lounge and think about some of the esoteric nature of Freemasonry or even some of the history of Freemasonry. Right. I had to think about Freemasonry here in the now.
Yeah.
So I was pretty lucky when I joined Northern Light. They had a full line. They didn't need anybody. And, you actually kind of had to want to be something. My first officer job was actually at LEO at Northern Light, and Chris got a lot of flack for it, but he always said, what better place for a new Mason to learn about Masonry than being the education officer?
Bingo.
And it fit well with my college at the time. I didn't have to be at every meeting. There was no responsibility. And back then, were you in charge of taking care of candidates? But Northern Light was really good at having, if you signed the guy's petition, you were his mentor. That period, if, ands, or buts. That was it.
So then, kind of going back to that second part of the question, and I'll reiterate it just in case you've forgotten.
I was about to ask you.
We kind of, this is why I like talking and we like these podcasts, because we get down these trails. What does being part of this fraternity, what does being a Mason mean to you? I mean, we've talked about DeMolay, Freemasons, what we'd love to change, where you started, and all that stuff.
Being a member of this fraternity in any level, whether you're a DeMolay, whether you're an Eastern Star, whether you're a Shriner, it doesn't matter. What matters is we are all a part of a tradition of excellence. We hold ourselves to higher standards. Being a Mason means a man of your word. When I shake another Mason's hand, or he asks me to do something, or I ask him to do it, with the shake of his hand, I trust him implicitly. And if he can't do something and he tells me I can't do this, I trust him that he can't do it. It's not because he doesn't want to, it's because he can't. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a gentleman that came in when I worked at the grocery store, and he saw my ring, and he goes, "You're a Mason?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a Mason in Northern Light." And he goes, "Oh, I'm a member of something, something, something. I don't remember now." And shook my hand, and he gave me, everything was on the up and up. And he said, "Hey, you guys overcharged me for this product. I bought 3 bags of it." And I said, "Do you have a receipt?" He said, "No, I don't have a receipt." He goes, "I can get it, but it's in my work truck somewhere." I said, "That's all good." I walked in the back, looked at my manager, and said, "Hey, boss, this guy out here says we overcharged him for this. The total comes out to 36. He doesn't have a receipt. I'm going to go ahead and give him his money back." And he said, "Oh, well, we'll have this lady look at the cameras and double check and make sure." I said, "No, you don't understand. Either we give him his money back now, or I'm going to reach into my own pocket and I'm going to pay him, and you can pay me back later." And he said, "You really trust this guy?" I said, "He's a Mason. He's got no reason to lie to me." So he let me do it, and he said, if you're wrong, you're going to pay it." I said, "That's fine. I have no doubt that this guy's being on the up and up with me." Guess what? He was. He was being truthful. We screwed him out of money. It was probably more money than he was asking for, if we're being honest, since we didn't have a receipt. So I trust my brothers implicitly. I trust your word. Your word is your bond. And I think it's a standard that we hold ourselves to. To me, being a Mason, when I meet you and I know you're a Mason, it's opened a door for you in my heart already. If you choose to go through that door, that's up to you. I'm not the most outgoing. I'm not the guy that's going to come up and, "Hey, brother, how are you? What's going on?" It's not me.
You're not Hulk Hogan and, "Hey, brother,
As much as I'm a biker, I don't do that. brother. See, I don't do it, because at a certain point, though, I know we use that word as a, there's no higher honor than to be considered a brother. But at a certain point, calling somebody a brother, if you use it so often, it loses its meaning, it loses its level. And while we use the term brother, I don't look at everybody as my brother. You two are my brothers, implicitly, no questions asked.
But Ricky,
I don't know about Ricky. But are they members of my fraternity and my brother? Yeah, to a point. But am I going to call them when I have a flat tire on the expressway at 2:00 in the morning? No, I'm calling one of you guys. You know what I mean? Like,
You're probably calling Ricky and then me and then...
Well, actually, I'm calling AAA first. But yes, I mean, it's very much being a Mason means you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that. I have to look at my ring and remind myself of, you need to stay in them due bounds. You need to hold yourself to that square of virtue. And sometimes I just got to tell myself to shut up. I mean, let's be honest.
You don't listen to me when I tell you that. You listen to yourself and your ring.
I have to, because sometimes the things I look at, I have to just take a deep breath and go, this is out of everyone's control. Just in the words of my favorite jarhead, Christopher Gorsuch, embrace the suck.
And I think that's a perfect note to take a little break on. Craftsman, we'd love it if you'd rejoin us for the next part of the interview.
Hey there, Craftsman. Brother Samuel here.
Hey, Craftsman. Brother Gabriel here.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to our content as much as we have enjoyed making it for you. It really has been a blast. But we do have a request for you if you've gotten any kind of a gain out of listening to our show.
Craftsman, we'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to fill out a survey connected to our podcast. In the description of the episode, you'll find a link to that survey. After you complete the survey, which will have sections for questions, comments, as well as answering all the questions, 2 lucky winners who complete the survey will win a free Mason Gear hat. And we all know that they're quality Mason Gear hats.
Oh, and just so you know, I picked them. They're hats I would wear, so you know they're pretty cool.
So thank you, Craftsman. If you have the time within the length of your cable tow, we'd really appreciate to hear from you.
And now, back to the interview.
And welcome back, Craftsman, to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast. Joining us again is one of our esteemed hosts.
Oh, God.
Brother WIlburn.
Laying it on a little
welcome
thick
to
there.
part 2. Well, part one and part two.
So you've told us about how you've lived Masonry in the fraternity, but I want to talk a little bit about how you live Masonry outside of the lodge.
Okay.
So what do you do for a living, for those of the craftsmen and listeners who may not know?
So I am what's called a radiological technologist. In fancy words, I'm an x-ray tech. I work for a level 1 trauma hospital, and I work third shift, and I have a specialty in trauma, surgery, and doing CAT scans or CT scans. So I do a little bit of everything. I'm the only one that does what I do there. So I take care of the whole hospital. So if you come in for the emergency room with a broken leg, I x-ray you. If you're up on the floor and you have pneumonia, I x-ray you too. It just all depends on, you never know what you're going to see in the middle of the night. And I've got one other person that works back in CAT scan with me. But other than that, a lot of times we're doing our own separate thing because we're both too busy, but I'm able to do everything that she can do, you know, and she helps me, and we're one of the only departments other than lab that touches every single patient in the hospital. I mean, I can literally be sent to any department and have to do anything. I've done surgeries while at the same time having a full ER. It is not a lot of people can do what I do.
That
it's
sounds
the ADD.
like a lot of work.
It's the ADD, man. I just let it go, let it roam.
And it just
It
works.
sparkles.
And it just works.
It just works. But
Like Todd Howard, it just works.
it just works.
So that must be sometimes quite the challenging work environment.
It is. You're seeing people in their worst.
So we've talked about it a little bit about your introspection, but what do you use or do to incorporate lodge teachings when you're at work?
So I often get into a situation where I am overwhelmed. I mean, just there's so much stuff to do, not enough time to do it, and you're constantly going through your brain going, what can I do first or in this order to make things happen? And sometimes everybody in the hospital thinks their thing is the most important, but they also don't know what's going on. And sometimes I got to deal with people that are really angry and really mean and really upset. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that square of virtue. And I need to remind myself that I'm a better man than I'm being right now. And I let it go.
You need to take a second, gather your thoughts.
Yeah, because a lot of times these people talk to you and there's a lot of superiority in the hospital field. We're all one team.
Yeah.
But we don't all know what each other does. So everybody thinks what they do is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And they call and do this right now.
This is stat. And
No.
Yeah.
Your stat is not nearly as stat as the other stats. Therefore, it goes to the bottom of the stats.
Well, I'm in the middle of this test, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop it mid-test
Right.
to start your test.
I'm going to go, I have to finish this, and I will get to yours when I get to your thing. I apologize.
Yeah.
But
That
sometimes I
sounds-
just have to remind myself that I'm a better man than I'm acting. And I let it go, and I look down at my ring, and I just take a deep breath, and I know, like, because I'm wearing my ring. I've had people look at my ring at work and go, "You're a Mason." Yeah, I'm a Mason. Oh, I'm brother so-and-so, or my grandpa was a Mason, or any number of things. But I'm wearing it on my finger. I wear it on my shoulder blade. I'm a Mason. It's not going anywhere. I'm a Mason at work. I'm a Mason at home. I'm a Mason everywhere. I'm not just a Mason in this lodge.
I like that. And I think that's a very important mindset to have. And one of the things that we've been doing on this podcast lately is discussing the idea of, does Masonry, or do you feel that Masonry has made you a better man? So my question to you is, this may sound like an odd question, but it's just to get you thinking. Has being part of Masonry made you that better man, or is it the teachings of Freemasonry that have made you that better man?
I don't think it's either of those things for me. I don't think it's being a member of Masonry has not made me a better man. Being a Mason and seeing the symbols and the working tools, these are things that I think about. These are things I sit down and I contemplate. And there's some practical value to a lot of our symbolism and a lot of our thoughts. I think my brothers are what make me a better man. I think being in the presence of people like you guys and like Charlie and Mark and these guys who have very strong moral compasses, even though we butt heads often, it's a standard that I have to hold myself up to because I stand next to you. How can I stand next to you if I'm not on the same character as you? That's my thought process. It's my brothers that hold me up to a different value, because if I wanted to be, I could let go of some of my higher moral character. I think deep down I'm a really good person. Like you said, I have a big heart, and I'm just a prickly Care Bear for the most part. But I think it's a lot harder for me to it's a lot easier for me to let those things shine when I stand next to people like you guys who let me relax and I have you guys to bounce off of.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, when I'm wrong and you guys tell me I'm wrong, I usually take it a lot heavier than when somebody else tells me I'm wrong. It's happened. I at least think about it. When you told me,
everyone's got to have their critics.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago when I was going on, and you're like, "Well, did you think about this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I thought about that." Blah 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 blah. But then I sat there and I was like, I never really thought about that. I was just showboating. I was just being all puffy chested, like.
You're just heated in the moment, and you're like, "No, that's not my opinion. It's wrong."
I think in a roundabout way, I think the fraternity does make me a better man. But I don't think it's teachings. I think the teachings are important. I think it's important traditions. It's really important stuff to know if you don't have those. But I think a lot of the things in our fraternity that we talk about, I already had. I'm charitable. I'm not trying not to give away too much here, but I mean, there's more than just
You're brotherly.
These are all
honorable.
things I have always valued. But the fact that I now have people to hold me accountable to it,
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes me a better man. And when I constantly look at people that, I meet people like Jim Hall. Jim's such a good dude. Like, you meet the guy and you're just over here like, bro, you're such a Mason. Like, I don't know. Like, you just meet guys like that and you just want to be more like them. And I think that's what holds me to it. I want to be like that. But it's a one step at a time journey,
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never be Jim Hall. I'll never be, Charlie Murphy. I'll never be Mark. But I can say that I stood next to them and they saw me as their equals, as brothers. So that's my thought.
And that's quite the thought. And I really like the answer to that question. I think it's
different.
It's a very Samuel Wilburn answer to that question.
It really is.
It's a very thoughtful Grandmaster of 2042.
I was going to say that. I was going to say the exact same thing, but I thought he's heard enough of me saying that. But it's so great to hear you say that too, right?
We just have to keep ironing in until about 2 weeks from now. He's going to go.
Can I actually be the Grandmaster by 2042? Like he's gonna start planning it out. Yeah, he's gonna start actually planning it out, and he's gonna have it in his calendar, and he's gonna start looking at things, and he's gonna be one of those guys who then forces people to be at certain events at certain times.
I'll tell you
be on his timeline.
If I was the Grandmaster, there would be the people would have to be really cool about a lot of things because I would change so much with the swipe of a pen, and they'd all be good things.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my favorite one, okay? Because it's not negative. It's
You'd
positive.
bring the 3 Fs from Demon Layback.
Well, yes, absolutely. But don't bring your girlfriend and your wife to the same event. Or do. But no, I think so we have one coming up, the Grandmaster's reception, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very opulent event, dinner, everybody's dressed to the nines. Grandmaster comes with his wife, a lot of hands, lots of speeches, lots of everything. That's not me. I'll tell you what I would want to do if I was a Grandmaster. I want all of your guys wearing lodge polos and meet me at the soup kitchen and help me serve the homeless. That's what I want. That's what I would say. Your district had better have a charity event that I'm going to show at, and we are going to do this together. That's me. That's what I would want. Not bad what we do. I'm just saying that would be the thing where I would be like, we were not doing a Grandmaster's reception. Instead, you will find a charitable event, and I will see you there.
What you're saying is you don't need the praise. You don't need
want it.
that.
Don't want it.
You'd rather be in the trenches doing the work,
Correct.
getting stuff done, being better men.
And the first person to call me worshipful brother after I was done, I'd be kicked in the nuts.
Wow.
Jeez.
Just being honest.
Wow. I'm going to give someone that we've never met before $5 and we like go up to him and say this. Just
don't sabotage another brother like that, Ryan.
No, I'll make sure it's like one of our guys, like a Tanner, a Ricky, a Dustin, be like, hey, here's $5. Go tell Sam this.
Go call him worshipful brother. But no, I'm like I said, it's stuff like that, stuff I would change that people would be like, you can't do that.
I mean, to be fair, there is a lot.
If I was.
To be fair to the Grandmasters, current and before, there is a lot of charity that does happen at the Grandmasters.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not in the slightest. I'm just saying what I would do.
Yeah.
It's what they do, what they want to do. They are the Grandmaster. That's their prerogative.
Yeah.
They whatever they choose to do. I'm just saying, for me, if they were like, we're going to show up and we're going to talk about you, I'd go, please don't.
Tell you what, you can, but we're just going to go to the soup kitchen and then you guys can badmouth me to the people we're getting the food to.
You can talk about how good I am to these people who don't care. They're just happy to have soup.
That's incredible.
Sorry.
Sorry. No. So you've answered quite a lot of our questions, even without them having to be asked.
It's almost like he writes them.
I know, right? So we've talked about him a lot with some of your videos and some of your stories. From your DeMolay days or your Mason days, who's your idol in this fraternity? And I think I know the answer to that.
I think
it's Chris Gorsuch. 100%. Those of you that don't know Chris was a good man. Sorry, I'm tearing up over here. Chris was my best friend. He was my mentor. It changed from being my dad advisor to being my best friend when I became an adult. He was the first person that, he caught me at 17 with a pack of cigarettes, and instead of chewing me out, he asked me what was going on, because that wasn't me. He was the guy that when I called drunk at 20, making bad, decisions, and I needed a ride home because I was in a bad situation, he came and got me. And I got to return the favor to him when he was in a really dark spot. He called me, I was his son. I was the son he never got to have. He had a daughter that he was so proud of. But, he treated me like his son, and he showed me what a Mason should be. A Mason's not a guy in his ivory tower spouting esotericism and he's not it's not always the college educated man in the fancy, $1,000 suit. A Mason is a man trying to make himself better and is a good brother. And he would have been the first man to take the shirt off his back and hand it to you. Even if he didn't have a shirt to give you, he would give you his. He was the best example of what a Mason should be to me. I've had a lot of really good mentors over the years, but he truly taught me what it meant to be a man, to stand up for your friends and to stand up for those that are important to you, and to not let somebody tell you what to think. Think for yourself. Just because they're a higher authority doesn't mean they're right. It just means they get to spout their authority. And to stand up for what you believe in, even if it's going to cost you. I really miss him. Unfortunately, he passed away in a motorcycle accident. He was a probationary member of my club, and he wanted to join us. He wanted to be my Masonic brother, one of my best friends, and he wanted to be my club brother. And one of my cherished memories, the last week before he died, I have a picture of him and I riding. Somebody took a picture of us side by side. You could see our patches. And he passed away in a motorcycle accident, and it was very sudden, came out of nowhere. And I miss him every day. There's a lot of days I wake up and I wish I could call Chris. He always knew what to say for advice. And I think that's one of the things about getting older is I'm running out of people to do that with. I'm running out of people to call for help, to call for advice. Instead of calling one of you guys who are on my level, we're all in the same shit pile. I'm running out of adults to call and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. What do I do? Help.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe that's part of growing up. But
yeah.
But Chris was my Masonic idol, and I miss him very, very much. I wish he was here. He would have loved this podcast. He would have been he would have been all about it. He would have you guys rolling laughing because he was so funny.
He would probably have been one of our very first guests.
He would have.
And
him and Jim
cheering us on from the sideline
and everything. Yeah. Everything you tell me about him from your DeMolay days too makes me wish that I had known him better. I knew him. I had gone to lodge events with him. I'd been in DeMolay stuff with him. I just wish that I had known him better.
It was a weird relationship because, like I said, it started off as just riding with some dude in the front seat of his little red Kia, and it ended with.
It's amazing how the road is. You start off with you didn't want to get in the car. You're like, I don't want to sit in this car for 45 minutes with no sound.
With this old band that I don't know.
Yeah, I can barely drive a stick and all this stuff. I don't want to do this. To he's your best friend. And
let me, not to go on a little tangent here, but I remember when Chris, I had been nominated for Chevalier, and Chris called me, and he ripped me a new one. He said, you need to get to Ackerman's, which is where he worked. You and I need to talk right now. You effed up. And I'm like, what? So I drive out there because I was right down the street from school when I got out of school. And he comes out of Ackerman's carrying this big ass pipe. And he goes, get on your knees. Get on your knees. And I went, and I did. And he goes, and tapped me on the floor. He goes, I can't wait to do that in a couple more months. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, you're going to be a Chevalier. Absolutely. I didn't even know what to say. I mean, it was the sense of humor that he had, but he had to always take things to another level, but you always remember it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I hope someday that we can honor the memory of Gorsuch, the memory of Sam Nefer, by being those types of people to DeMolays in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really do. I hope that that's something that we can provide because we have had good role models for it. And it seems especially with you.
They always say that you turn into the adult you would have been safe with when you were a kid. And I think that sticks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of Gorsuch in me that I always felt safe with him. I was never in any danger.
Yeah.
And I take a lot of his, humor and funny because that's what I grew up with. Just.
Actually, I take a lot of my dad.
Yeah, I believe that.
So.
Dad's a pretty awesome dude.
Thanks.
But yeah, I miss him very much, and I just hope I'm doing him proud.
You are. You are. Don't you worry. You're doing him proud.
Thanks.
So, on that lovely note, we're starting to move into the tail end of the questions, but I have a special question that I came up with for you.
Oh, geez, I'm scared.
It's not super.
This is PG-13.
Yes.
Calm down.
Yes, it is. It is a PG-13 question, And it's one that I thought of because Ryan, not to exclude you, but Sam and I do have a lot of like Demolay connection. We have a lot of special memories of that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the guys of us in the friend group have a special memory of that, have a special connection to it. It has a special place in our hearts. And so my question for you, Sam, before we get into some of the last questions, is what advice from Demolay or things that Demolay does could the older part of Freemasonry learn from? What could Freemasonry learn from Demolay?
That's a good one. It's so simple, it's almost borderline dumb. I have thought about those Demolay days over and over and over and over again, and I compare Masonry to them because when I joined Masonry, I thought I was joining the much more organized, more adult version of Demolay, and I was wrong. I think the Demolays did it better. I think when you're young like that, you don't have this sense of overarching responsibility, right? We did amazing ritual work that would make adults' jaws drop. I mean, I've seen
it.
We've done it. Why? What did we do so special? I'll tell you what it was. We knew when to take it seriously and we knew when not to. We always did.
It was always fun first.
And then, so we're going to go to Cedar Point. We got to put on a degree work, though, beforehand. Okay, well, we're going to put 110% into this degree work, and then we're going to go put another 110% into riding the Millennium Falcon, or the Millennium Force. It doesn't... I think what Masonry could learn from it is to have fun. You got to have fun. Because if we're not having fun doing this, the tradition's important, the ritual's important, the brotherhood's important. But if you're not having fun with your brothers while you're doing it, it's a waste of time. You're wasting your energy. You're not going to have the same experience out of it. And that's why we had fun doing it as kids, because we got to be goofy and fun, but we knew when to turn the light switch on and we were serious. So that's what I would say, is I would say that they need to tone back the seriousness of it. If somebody misses a line, it's not the end of the world. If they make it up, as long as it looks good for the candidate, coach them afterwards to get the line correctly and to let things go.
Yeah.
But the candidate doesn't know the difference. But if and I think we've talked about it on a previous episode, I trust you implicitly when we do degree work together. Because we work together. You're my brother. And if you falter, I'm going to either help you unscrew yourself up, or I'm going to keep moving and we're going to fix the problem,
Yeah. Dang, some of those Demolay memories brought back some feelings.
Right?
So
I miss those days.
I do too.
It was a lot simpler back then.
It was, but as we always do,
yeah.
And as we're all learning, as we're getting older, it's always got to be looking to the future too.
Right.
So I think that fits with some of our good last questions.
Works for me.
What advice would you like to tell that future Demolay, or that future Mason getting ready to knock at the door, or that future new Master Mason, or that future new man who's looking for something 50, 80 years down the line?
I would say if you think that you're going to knock at that door and you're going to find all the secrets to the universe, you're not. If you think you're going to find the answer to your problems, you're not. If you think if you're going to look at the puzzles and the symbology and you're going to somehow have a eureka moment of, this is what I'm missing in my life, you might, but probably not. But if you knock at that door with an open heart and an open mind and the willingness to learn and to be loved, you will make some of the best friendships you'll ever have in your life.
Yeah.
And nothing will compare to it.
I love that. And so, the last question that we tend to get a lot of interesting answers of. What do you want your legacy in this fraternity to be?
So there was a time when I was terrified of being forgotten. I wanted to be remembered. I wanted a monument to my greatness, my younger years. I wanted my name on plaques. I wanted the titles. I wanted my name in the record books.
You wanted the glory.
I wanted a spot in history. I was deathly afraid of being forgotten. But as I get older, none of that matters anymore. I want to be remembered in this fraternity for being a good man, for always being willing to stand up for what he believed in, but also stood up for what he thought was important. The titles don't matter, the plaques don't matter, none of it matters. But if generations down the line, people's kids are still saying, "Oh God, you remember Sam? God, he was the best uncle we ever had." You know, he used to give Dad so much crap, but in the same breath, he bought me a drum set for my 3rd birthday and made my mom mad and blah blah blah. But also, he bailed me out of jail when I got picked up and didn't tell my parents. You know, I took care of your kids. They were fine.
Sam is to never babysit future generations.
Gotcha. But no, I think that's what's important to me. I think making a legacy is not about me. Making a legacy of what the fraternity will be is what's important to me. I want future generations to value and love Masonry the same way I have. But the only way that happens is by us pushing it into the future. My name's not important.
And I've kind of seen that over the few years I've been at Genoa Lodge with you, is you get frustrated when people are, well, you have to do it this way. You have to get this title. You have to get this degree. And you've pushed back of, it doesn't matter. Are they having a good time? Yeah. Okay, then who the blank cares?
Yeah.
Like, they're not.
Thank you for showing the self-respect, Ryan.
Sam is rubbing off.
You are going on such a self-improvement journey. I love you.
But you've put it bluntly, as you've said, is, yes, tradition is good. Ritual is good. But as long as we're having fun, that's all that really matters. That's what keeps us coming back is, heck, if we wanted to just do business, I guarantee you, in 2 years, there wouldn't be a soul in any of these seats.
I will tell you this much. I've been a member of many organizations. I will tell you that Masonry thinks that it is unique. It is not. It is, many organizations run just like ours. Run. Same hierarchy, same position. I would debate has a much more important impact in my life. You know, what the worshipful master tells me to do in a meeting doesn't affect my day-to-day life. What my club president tells me can affect my day-to-day life. What Masonry has going for it is the unique bond that we have and the amount of fun that you can have while doing it and the ritual work. That's what makes Masonry unique. But as far as running a business meeting, all businesses run the same. You remember the Guard. I'm sure your Guard meetings where you're on the board.
The association meetings.
Run just like us. They run the same. I'll tell you what, most motorcycle club meetings run the same. We do parliamentary procedure too. It's not unique. What is unique is the ritual and the brotherhood that's formed from that ritual. Motorcycle club brotherhood is different. It's a bond of brothers on the road in a practical aspect. It's, we've tested your mettle by being the probationary member, and we've seen how much you want it. And now I'll go to war for you if somebody hurts you. No questions asked. Nobody puts their hand on one of my club brothers, because then we all got to handle it. And it's usually an argument. But it's a different kind of brotherhood than Masonry. It's a practical brotherhood. It's a close bond of being on the road. There's nothing like riding side by side with somebody at 85 miles an hour on the highway. And I mean handlebar to handlebar. There's no adrenaline rush like it. And you're reading the guy next to you's mind, and he's reading yours, and you're listening to each other's engines, and you're keeping up with each other, and you're just straight in a pack for hours at a time. You don't even listen to the radio. You're just listening to the road and the engines. It's a thrill that I can't explain. But Masonry has a whole different thrill to it. Masonry is a deep emotional bond of differing minds coming together as one to perform one task. And that's what I think is beautiful about it. And I always tell people Masonry scratches one itch for me, and being in a motorcycle club fixes the other. And both sides make me a much better man.
Well, Craftsman, I don't think I could have said it any better myself. And generally, I close the podcast off with some interesting words, but I think I'll let Brother WIlburn here close us.
I will.
Yes, you will. You know our closing. Why don't you say what you got to say?
Am I doing the whole thing?
Close? Sure.
All right.
Take it away.
Remember, craftsmen, keep your working tools in order and always be on the level.
Craftsmen, as always, thank you for listening to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast. We appreciate all your likes, comments, and listens on all the streaming platforms and on our social media. We really appreciate you staying with us tonight and going down what is kind of a trip down memory lane and also kind of an advisory for the future. Brother WIlburn and myself have had a lot of important experiences with DeMolay. So to any of our craftsmen and listeners who may currently be DeMolays or who are senior DeMolays, we appreciate everything that we've all been through together in the fraternity and brotherhood that is DeMolay, and continue to do so in the fraternity that is Freemasonry. Any DeMolays, always keep the faith, always move forward, always support your brothers, and always be willing to accept advice from your Masonic advisors and from your lodge. And if you choose, through your teachings in DeMolay, to move on to that door of Freemasonry, don't be afraid to knock, because there are many senior DeMolays in that lodge room waiting to take you with open arms. Craftsmen, once again, thank you very much. And if you can find it within the length of your cable tow to give us likes, more listens, and share us with your lodge brothers, we would really appreciate it. Have a nice night.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, its officers, or any of its jurisdictions. They only reflect those of the hosts or guests.